Okay, we are live, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we're to go then. Let's get started to call this session of the Board of Revision to order and begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Innu, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 41st Nation, Treaty 3 territory. With me today on our panel is Richard Whitbread and Maurice Terrien. My name is Harvey Diamond. The City of Winnipeg Assistant Governor is represented by Nathan Kupfer, and our hearing secretary is Stephen Munn. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rules in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application. We will limit discussion to those matters. Statements that are made after this hearing are sworn testimony, and when speaking to a matter must first be sworn in. Be advised that comparison of assessments of properties are not considered evidence by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council. It's independent of it and the City Administration. It makes decisions based on the evidence that is provided at the hearing and issues a written order that we mail to all participants as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's orders with respect to an application may be appealed to the municipal board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to application for exemption from taxation. And should a party wish to appeal, information how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I'll confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony followed by any questions that the applicant may have. Then the applicant's testimony followed by any questions. Each side will give an opportunity to summarize if they wish to do so. Once all the evidence of an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The person will repeat for each item on the docket today, and the session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and render its decisions. Receive the board's order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will form part of a public record. And today we'll be hearing all items maintained to be 1 to 6. And Mr. Lund, you can swear in the parties at this point.
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Nathan Kupfer.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Marcelo Navarro.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Okay, first matter is 823 Regent Avenue West, and I note from the brief file that the city is seeking a non-cooperation. Would like to discuss that with us, Mr. Kupfer?
That's correct. So this is one of these cases where we sent out our regular mailer, we sent out our certified mailer. It was during COVID, so we don't have signatures on the actual document, which is fairly consistent here. But it was showing that it was delivered by Canada Post. I don't have any information about a change of tenancies or a change of location or anything like that that might impact their ability to respond. So based on that, we are requesting that the non-cooperation be applied in this instance.
Hey, Mr. Navarro, do you have any position on that?
So I discussed it with the owner, and they indicated that they were not aware whether they had sent one in, and I had no records of it. So there's a technicality there, but I don't think we would want to use that. I think that it's established that they didn't send in the INE.
Okay. Any panel members have any questions on this one? I think we have to discuss it in private, or is it a pretty straightforward matter and we can render a decision?
I have no questions. Mr. Chairman, the only thing I see here on the docket, I think they did not respond for 2 years. Is that correct? 20 and 21? I'm trying to look for it.
That's what it appears.
Is that correct, Assessor?
I haven't looked into 2021. This is just based solely on the non-compliance for 2020. That's generally the income and expense mailer that we're going to rely on for these 20.
Okay, that's the only one you're looking at. Okay, that's fine. Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Ripper, do you have any thing to ask? Either Mr. Navarro or the assessor?
No.
Okay, and I don't either, and I think on the basis of the fact that you're not contesting this, Mr. Navarro, that we have really no basis to refuse the city.
Correct.
And so I'm not gonna take the time to discuss it, because I think it's a waste of time.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you to proceed then.
Okay.
Okay,
So this is 823 Regent Avenue, Auto List of Canada Incorporated. And this is a used car dealership. It's not a new car dealership, so you can look at the general location and the property itself. So there is a garage and a sales area, and I guess what you would call a waiting area in the center of the property as well. On page 8, you can see the property description, and I think we can just skip over that. We're using the income approach, obviously, so if you flip to page 13, that's where we start with the valuation. So this is a car dealership, and the issue with car dealerships has been exactly what to use in terms of a rent. So they have both what you would call an industrial element and a retail element. And that is effectively why you see two sets of comparables there, because we are effectively looking at two methodologies, one retail and one industrial or car oriented. And based on those set of samples, we've chosen a rent of $11 per square foot for the main retail areas, and a rent of $8.50 for the back side of it, which is the garage areas. So blended together, it comes to 1038 or $254,904. Now, our auto use comparables are from around the city. They aren't specific to this area. However, our retail rents are specific to this area. And as you can see, most of them are on Regent. Actually, all of them are on Regent. In terms of vacancy allowance, we're not disputing this. It's 2%. That is the market. We won't disagree with that. Shortfall rate of $6. Non-recoverable expenses, we haven't deviated from that. We use 7%. And in terms of the capitalization rate, we have our capitalization rate charts, the retail cap rates and the industrial cap rates. So we've selected a capitalization rate of 7% for this property, and that corresponds to the retail standard quality. And for the industrial, it would correspond to kind of the midway point of the Class B category. So on page 15, you can see our income summary, and you can review that. As I mentioned, I've already mentioned the parameters that we've used. So we've come up with a indicated market value of $3,276,765. Now, in terms of the appendix, obviously, generally we attach the income and expenses on here, but there were no income and expenses in here. So what we've done is attach the comparisons that we've looked at. So at least the retail ones on Regent Avenue West. So number one, you can see is a Dollar Tree. Number two is a Freshco. Number three is the Brick. Number four is an H&M. And number five is a Best Buy. And number six is a Staples. So these are common retail outlets throughout the city. We've specifically chosen, comparisons from the Regent Avenue West area. So that is pretty much my presentation, and I'm open for questions.
Okay. Mr. Cupler, do you have any questions of the applicant?
I just wanted to ask Mr. Navarro if he had a chance to see the inside of this building, and if he could speak at all to the quality of the finishings inside.
Yes. So I have been in this building in the past, directly related to the issue of the income and expenses that were not submitted. So there was a history of this in the past. It is, I would say, I think a standard quality industrial building. It's a flex warehouse, as you can see, and it has many potential uses. Car use being one of them. But in terms of where we rank it on the quality scale, I don't think it's a bad quality building, so we haven't given it that bad quality capitalization rate. And I don't think it's the best quality either. So again, we haven't given it that upper end of the scale. I think it lies somewhere in the middle. It's a newer building. You can see that it's had, you know, it is not your typical, what I would say, used car dealership where it, you know, where sometimes they take a former used car dealership that really has outlived its life and they put a used car dealership. No, I think this was an industrial building that was specifically made for auto use. However, I tend to think of the higher quality retail assets as being those regional malls and community malls, those types of retail properties. I think this, as an individual property, would kind of lie in the middle.
Thank you. I'm looking at your page 8, where you provide a pretty good breakdown here of the different areas and the year. So we're showing 1996 at about 3,500 square feet. That was the original building, correct?
Correct.
And then the remainder, about 5/6 of the floor area was constructed in 2004?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Mr. Whipper, any questions?
I have a couple. Mr. Navarro, could you comment for me, please, on the ratio? This is a little bit of a high ratio with respect to access or surplus land. Are there different standards for automobile dealerships because of the need for space for the cars to be stored?
Well, I would say that for retail in general in this area, because most of this area is zoned either C3 or C4, and that allows for the largest type of density on retail locations. So whether you would have a single retail location in here, like you know, a common retail, I'll use the Brick as an example. There would still be a considerable parking requirement in there. So it happens that, yes, you are correct. There are demands for parking for auto use. And that is why typically auto uses tend to have those larger lots. And in terms of the building ratio to building to land ratio, you get the much higher building to land ratios for auto use. But I would say that in this particular area, if you go down the list of properties, they're all going to have lots of land because they need lots of parking in those areas.
Thank you. I suspected that, but you've clarified. Second question, the cap rates that we're looking at today seem to be higher than what I normally see, and certainly higher than what you outline in your typical commercial property cap rates for good locations, etc. Is there a different standard for automobile dealership and related auto service businesses with respect to cap rate?
No. So there is no specific cap rate related to auto use or auto vehicle dealerships. They tend to align with the type of zoning and the area surrounding it. So if you have, for example, an auto use location within an industrial zone, we tend to favor more so the industrial capitalization rates than we would the retail. And in this specific situation, because we are in a retail area, a retail zone and retail hub, we would tend to favor more so the retail cap rates. And you have to recall back to what I said. This property could be one of many things. It has the appropriate land size to put whatever type of retail location in here. However, you would also have to take into account that most of those retail locations under the zoning bylaws would have considerable requirements in terms of parking. So that is consistent throughout whatever you see here in this C4 zoned area. So I tend to think that, we tend to look more so at where it's lying and what's around it in terms of the type of capitalization rate that we're going to put on it.
Would those comments follow if, say, the owner wanted to put a car wash on this property, which is auto-related, but doesn't require a significant parking component?
Yeah, I'm not sure if the owner wanted to put a car wash in here. Well, first of all, I'm not sure how much sense that would make considering the type of property and location that you're putting it in. So I'm not sure that that would actually be approved at this point for that type of property. I think the city would probably want something a little bit more intense than a car wash in there. However, if a car wash did happen to go in there, you're right, there would not be as much of a requirement for parking space. And there would be that potential to actually maybe subdivide the parcel. So there's many things that could happen. But we tend to think that for this area, for the type of parcel that there is there, the most likely outcome is that you're going to have some type of retail use in here going forward.
Yes. Sorry to take up the time, Mr. Chairman, but this will apply to quite a number of properties today. So I wanted to be clear on the issue of ratio and cap rate. I have no question.
I appreciate that too, Mr. Whipper, because it certainly helped me as well. The question you asked, I think were good ones, so thank you. Mr. Terry, any questions?
Yes, I'm looking at your comps on page 13, and I see on the Regent side, you've got the median at 1161, but there's also a large piece of property at 57,510, item 2 on Regent,
Yeah.
which is at 974. Wouldn't you say the economies of scale on larger pieces of property reduce the rent per square foot? What is your comment on that?
Yes. So what you're looking at there at 57,510, you can actually look at it on page. Sorry, I'm just going to ask you to turn to page 19. Okay.
I have to find it.
Okay.
That's comp 2?
Yeah, it's a Fresco.
Oh, it's the Fresco one, okay.
Yeah. So recently developed or redeveloped. It's a large space, so I agree that with the economies of scale, typically the rent drops. However, this one would have probably an artificially higher rent simply because it's a newer development. And there would be those additional costs involved in redeveloping this property, putting in that tenant, the inducements, all of those things that go into the rent. The tenant improvements that actually go into the rent.
Okay, my further question on this, again, I'm on the comps. Your median is at 11. 1150, 11, yeah, I think it's 1150. You've used 11 in your workup. So what's your logic there? Because I'm looking at those comps. I know it's difficult between car lots and retail. I know it's a difficult area, but I still want to understand why you reduced it to $11 when your comps indicate something different.
Yeah, I would say, Mr. Tarian, that 99% of the time, I never go with the average from a sample set. The average is simply something that we put in there just to show what the average is, the median is. But yes, we do adjust the rent according to what we think it should be. And as for the logic of it, we're looking at the particular location, the type of property it is, and we're comparing it to the other retail properties that we think would probably have a slightly higher rental rate than our property would, being a used car dealership. So it's not as high as, for example, $12 per square foot or $13.55, but it is still on the high end. So we're comfortable at $11 per square foot. We have blended it in according to this. So we take the approach that we're going to put a slightly lower rent on the garage portion of it. And we have, so in the end, it comes out at $10.38. It's still within the margin here in terms of the high-low. But again, we're not dealing with a multinational, chain here. We're dealing with a local used car dealership.
Okay, and one last question, Mr. Chairman, it's on the garage at 850, no comps there. So again, I tried to analyze this the best I can. So how did you arrive at your 850 for the garage? Because then that brings in your blended rate at 1038. So I just wanted to understand that a little better.
So we have some auto use in the second area. And those are auto use specifically. Obviously, they range depending on size, location. We've put an $8.50 rent on it. Really, it's at this point we could have put a $7 rent on it or a $10 rent. We just happened to choose an $8.50. We tend to think that the back side of it, which is the industrial use area, is not the area where most of the value is coming in. It's the front side of it.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, thanks very much. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think a lot of your application and the cities comes down to the rent that we ascribe. I mean, there's a little bit of a difference on cap rate too, but getting to the rent, I look at your first of all, my first question is, there's a lot of car dealerships in the city, and there's quite a few on Regent Avenue. And why aren't any of your comparisons car dealerships? Why are you going to separate into retail on one hand and garages on the other and do a blended rate when it'd be so much simpler to just find some comparables that make sense and give them to us and not make it so convoluted?
Right. Well, the short and simple answer is that you'll be lucky if you ever find an actual car dealership lease. So right off, to answer your question, they're almost impossible to find because most of them tend to be owner occupied. So there aren't many. And we'll look into the assessor's methodology later on, but really they are using the same thing that we are. They're using retail leases from throughout the city. That is where we are handcuffed with this particular use, is that we're trying to find the best solution to something that really is difficult to pin down in terms of how we value this property. There has been, there is the issue of the cost approach. Certainly, I think it's applicable. However, the cost approach can be how would I put it? it's subject to a lot of, I guess, interpretation, because you can make adjustments on obsolescence that maybe one person wouldn't make and another person would make. You can,
Okay, I guess the answer to my question, so I take it then that you looked for leases of auto
Yeah.
dealerships and couldn't find any?
yeah, and it goes to Mr. Whitbread's questioning at the beginning, is that we tend to rely more so on the particular area that these things are in.
Okay,
So they're in a C4 area, and the leases come specifically from C4 area, C3, but very close to the subject.
okay. And you already answered Mr. Terrian's question when he asked you why, if you have an average that you showed and you come up with a lesser rent that you ascribe to this property. So basically that again is interpretation on your part.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I guess I'm going to ask the same question on the second part, the garage portion, where again you've got a median of
Yeah.
1252 or median 1150 and an average of 1252, and you're blending your rate at 1038,
Yeah.
and you're using that to blend down the
So
value that you had.
one is a retail area that could function as a retail location with some, slight modification. The back portion is a garage which has lifts and pits and all of those things that come with garages. And those things are, you have to do a lot of work on them to change them. So, but it's.
I understand that, Mr. Navarro, but you're saying that your second valuations are an auto-based things. They all have pits and valleys
For sure.
and other things, and you still have come through with a lesser value. So I asked you a simple question, and you're not answering it because you're telling me.
So what,
The
okay,
question I had was, you have an average value
right.
and you lowered it arbitrarily, and I'm wondering what basis you were able to come in on the rent on this property and use a lesser value than your average or median.
Yeah,
on the auto dealerships you showed
It's
us.
specific to the location itself. I mean, so most of these are individually functioning garages. They tend to front main streets, and that is their only use. And this is a car dealership, so it has two uses. It has the retail portion and the industrial portion, which is the back side of it, which is the garage. These ones tend to benefit from their location, and I'm not saying that this is a particularly bad location, but it's really the front of the building where the value is.
Yeah, I'm sure they do most of their own work, their warranty work and their own cars that they take in the repair so that they can sell them because it's a used car.
Yeah,
So a lot of the cars they take in probably need some work before they put them up for sale.
correct. It's not like your
But
car dealership where your new car dealership where they're using you as the go-to for oil changes, for any repair, warranty maintenance, or any type of body issues, accidents, those type of things. This is more so they're buying cars and they're repairing them in the back, getting them into that lot condition where they can actually sell them.
yeah. Okay, well, you know what, I'm not sure if I agree completely, but that's your answer and I have to accept that. So that's my question.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a further question?
You can, Mr. Whitford.
So I'm looking at that chart, Mr. Navarro, on page 13, and it's the chart that has your main upper and garage rates. And
Yeah.
about a value proposition for the industrial component of this, which is the garage, at
Yeah.
850, which is the lesser amount. And
Yeah.
I'm curious if you would comment on the fact that there are some assessments that suggest that the real value in a automotive center such as this is in the industrial component, that the profits are made from the industrial component, not from the sale of the vehicles themselves. The margins are very low on the sales, but the comeback service revenue is what feeds these dealerships. Can you comment on that?
Well, I would think that you have to distinguish between a used car dealership and a new car dealership. So used car dealerships don't necessarily always offer those services. So your oil changes, your body work, all of those things, your car repair and maintenance. If you go into a new car dealership, that's what they're set up for. They have those, nice little bays and areas that you go into for a quick oil change. They have the repair areas. They have the auto body areas. This doesn't. This really isn't that. This is more so a prep area for their lot.
Okay, how many? I mean, I'm trying to look at your photographs and see how many bays there are, and there seems to be a fairly fancy showroom. It seems to be set up more along the lines of a regular dealership, and knowing that they probably have some warranty on the vehicles, there's probably some obligation
Yeah.
on the consumer to go in.
I mean,
let me finish, please.
Yeah.
There's probably some obligation by the consumer to go in for regular oil change for the term of the warranty, which is typically 1 year plus.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about those comments. This doesn't look like a standard drive-by auto repair shop. This is a little bit more significant than that, is it not?
It is an auto dealership, and it's actually the front part of it is actually quite large.
Yeah.
And it has a large waiting area. It has, again, a large retail area, office areas. But I mean, when I was there, I didn't see a lot of activity in terms of cars driving in and going for oil changes and things like that. You're right. There may be servicing involved in terms of warranty work. But I think there's a slight difference between this type of dealership and your modern auto dealership.
Okay, so you're discounting that 850. Sorry, you're discounting that proposition that the 850 is too low, based on my comments. Then, if I understand you correctly, you're holding on your 850 for the
that's the rent that I went with. I mean, obviously, it's the smaller part of the property overall. So, I mean, if you want to adjust that, that's something you can do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No further questions.
Thank you. Scupper, it's your turn.
So this is file number 22-2917, roll number 0900750540. Street address is 823 Regent Avenue West. As we've been discussing, this is a complete auto dealership. The building, or part of the building, was originally constructed in 1996, with the remainder being completed in 2004. Got a leasable area of over 24,000 square feet, so it's not a small mom and pop type dealer. It is fairly significant from what I can see, and a land area of just under 2 acres located right on Regent Avenue. The 2023 assessment is model driven at $4,244,000, and I'm recommending that they're being maintained today. As Mr. Navarro has pointed out, this is an owner-occupied dealership, as most of them tend to be. We have no net leases that I'm aware of any significant amount for vehicle dealerships. So we've supplied, or I've supplied here on page 4, sampling of 28 big box retail stores. As Mr. Navarro touched on, these are generally the best comparables for vehicle dealerships. They generally contain 3 components. You walk in, there's a showroom, right? This is generally high-end retail space. That's the retail part that the agent discussed. It's generally got a shop area or a garage area. Some dealers will have larger ones, some will have smaller ones, depending on whether they just do detailing or whether they do full service. And then there's also generally a fairly significant office portion. All of your salespeople will have offices. If it's a larger dealership, you'll do in-house financing, that sort of thing. So there will generally be quite a few offices as well. So it's kind of a hybrid beast here of retail, office, and warehouse space. The 28 comparables that I've supplied, I don't think we're supposed to give the exact who is who, but just generally speaking, in no particular order, these are Giant Tiger, Michaels, The Brick, Staples, Marshalls, Bed Bath & Beyond, Good Life Fitness, those types of properties. Like it's been pointed out, these generally have large amounts of land, lots of parking. If you picture any of these types of buildings, generally have huge parking lots, very similar to an auto dealership, as well as a combination of those components of office and retail, as well as warehouse space. So these net rates that I've been presented, that I'm presenting today, like I said, those are a combination, or rather blended rates, including all of that space, the retail space and the office space and the warehouse space. So I believe, Mr. Chairman, you absolutely hit the nail on the head there by saying that you shouldn't be breaking out separate warehouse space here, because that's already being included in the comparables that both myself and Mr. Navarro, I believe, are presenting. Page 5 of my brief shows the subject property income workup. We're only using a rate of $12 a foot here, $12.04, and a capitalization rate of 6.55%. Like I said, everything is model driven here. I haven't touched anything. I don't believe any of these rates are on the high end. So I don't believe I can recommend any sort of reduction today. As has been pointed out, we don't have specific cap rates for car dealerships either, as we don't have a lot of arm's length sales. And operating incomes, we can't derive those. So I would simply point you to the office capitalization rates, the industrial capitalization rates, as well as the retail capitalization rates. So all kind of fall at the low end of that. I believe we have it about 5.6% at the absolute lowest, ranging all the way up to about 7.75% at the absolute highest. Not really any reason to consider something outside of that for the properties that we'll be discussing today, in my opinion. The remainder of my brief here is the income and expense mailer, which I've attached, which again wasn't filled out. It's owner occupied, so the best we would get out of them are expense and sizing type of information anyways. It's about all the information I have on the property. So based on what I've seen in the comparables, based on how we're modeling this, I would recommend that $4,244,000 be maintained, and I'm recommending it today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, any questions?
Yes. The comparisons that you have are from Sterling Line at the bottom. That is the Seasons Mall, correct?
I believe so.
Okay, and Portage Avenue, 1485, that would be Portage, Polo Park area?
Yeah, quite a few of these are in the Polo Park area.
Okay. So the only one from Regent that you've actually put in here is 1546 Regent, correct?
1610.
1610?
Comparable number 27 is 1610 Regent.
Oh, okay. So you've got two in here.
Two on Regent, yes.
Okay. And none of these rents actually correspond to what you are proposing in terms of a rent. I assume that that's the model working?
This value is all model driven.
Okay. So can you speak to how the model actually lowered the rate per square foot? Seeing that I had to explain how I rationalized my rent, I think you should give it a shot.
I'll keep it simple and say age, size, and location. Like is pointed out, this is a larger building. Economies of scale are going to drag that net rent per square foot downwards. Based on that, the original building was in 1996, with the remainder being constructed in 2004. If you look at the average age in my comparables list here, it is a newer comparables list. There's no average given, but I would eyeball it for you probably around 2006, 2007. So this is a representation of newer big box retail properties, largely well located, as is the subject in my opinion, and I think our best two comparables both more than support our valuation.
Okay. And in terms of your capitalization rate, Other than the chart that you haven't submitted any other type of capitalization rate information that we could look at to substantiate or at least, I guess, gain something from. So it's just the chart that's in your brief. That's it.
That's right. It's just the chart that's on page 7.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Terry, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I was on the cap rate one as well on page 7. Because I know on previous appeals, the assessor was saying they were using office as the cap rates on dealerships. But I see today you're combining office, industrial, and retail and coming up with a blended 655. So I'm trying to get a little bit of a sense here. Could you comment a little more? I know you have, but I'm assuming you're using the city of Winnipeg stuff, not anything on the right. And could you tell me how I can maybe figure this out a little better in my mind?
Oh, that's a fair question. So like I said, we've got no car dealership specific cap rates here. They're largely, it's a beast composed of 3 different sections largely. So I don't have one specific cap rate really to point you to here. Instead, I would say, generally speaking, it's a newer building. It's located in what I would say is a good location for its purpose, given its size, given the size of the land and everything around it. In terms of evaluating this from a risk perspective, which is largely what the cap rate, in my opinion, represents, I don't see any reason why this would be above or below any form of average here in terms of our capitalization rates. And I think that modeled 6.55% is fairly reflective of that average.
So I guess we got to do the gymnastics on how you arrive at that 655. I think that's what you're telling us.
I didn't personally come up with it, but the model says it's the fair value, and that's what we're recommending today. Yes.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. That's all I had.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread, do you have any questions?
Yes, a couple. I want to go back to the rent issue. I wasn't quite understanding, I think, of what you tried to say there. So if we look at your median at 1827, that was model driven. I'm sorry, that was survey driven, if I understand you correctly.
That's right. Yes, the rents on page 4 are survey driven. These would be derived from the income and expense mailers that we get from these properties.
So then the model will take that and the model will say, no, we're going to give you $12.04. Is that correct?
That's correct. I would say that that's largely based on the location and the size. Other than that, I don't have much of a theory for you as to why it's that much lower. The economies of scale would certainly play a factor. Perhaps as well, Regent isn't being valued at the same level as the Polo Park area or the Sterling Lion area, which is where I think a large part of the sample size is coming from.
Okay, I'll skip to the second question. Just noticing there's about 1,000 square feet difference in the rental area. Did I miss something in the literature that suggested why you have 25,546 and there's 24,546 in the applicants in literature? You know why there's 1,000 square foot difference?
I'm showing 24,546 on both briefs. Could you point me to which page you're looking at?
Okay, bear with me. I see that now down here, but I'm sorry, my mistake. I wrote it down incorrectly. Thank you for clarifying. No further questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Like previous questions from everybody to you, Mr. Cupfer, I guess I have the same question. That you prepared a brief and you tried to show us reasonable comparative rents, I'm assuming, and that isn't done by the model. That would be done by yourself. The model picks a much lower value. So are you going to tell us that maybe you didn't use the best examples on page 4 to show us what comparable rents are, and you could pick better examples?
I can't say I have an apple to apple comparison for you here. I think you're certainly correct in saying that due to the larger size of the space and due to the location, that this would fall towards the low end of our comparables list here and the lower end of our range. Even based on the two that I have on Regent here, the closest available, they're still quite a bit higher. So all I can really point to is the increased size and the fact that it's a bit of an older building as well than the general comparables list here. So older building, larger size, Regent compared to Polo Park area. Those are the three main differences as I see between how the model would have derived this $12.04 and where our average is coming from, closer to $18.
Okay, I guess you answered the best you can, but I think what you're telling us then is that you could have given us better examples. Because really what we do is we use the examples, we try to determine if the examples are fair, where the model picked up a fair rent that it described. And based on the information you gave us, it appears that it's very fair, but I'm not sure if your examples are fair because they're so much higher than what the model's determined. So it gives us difficulty in using your material to make our assessment.
Understood.
Okay. Okay, thank you. I don't have any further questions or comments. We'll render our decision in due course so we can go on with our next property, which is 1486 Regent Avenue West. And when you're ready, Mr. Cupper, you can proceed.
This is file number 22-1035, roll number 090104, 74210. Street address is 1486 Regent Avenue West. This is again a complete auto dealer, close by to the last property that we discussed. Similarly constructed as well, I believe, where part of the building was originally constructed in 2014. And then significant additions and the rest of the construction came later around 2019. The total leasable area, we have a 57,000 square feet and a land area of 317,000 square feet. Work out to between 6 and 7 acres. And we've got a 2023 model driven assessment again here. This one's at $12,245,000 that we'll be recommending today. This is the Jim Pattison dealership. So there's a Toyota dealership and a Subaru dealership on site, two separate buildings. It's owner occupied. Like we've stated, all these auto dealerships are, so we don't have rents. I've supplied the same rent comparable table comprised of big box retail locations. I haven't made any changes to these comparables. Page 5 of my brief has the income value workup for this property. Based on the fact that this is a newer building, the model does seem to have applied slightly higher rents than the last dealership we discussed. This one here between $14 and about $16. The space is demised into two different areas. Like I said, there's two different dealerships on site. So I believe one's a Toyota and one's a Subaru. It's all the same owner. All the other parameters here are model driven, the 2% vacancy, 3% expenses, $6 shortfall. And in this case, we have a capitalization rate pretty close to the last one we discussed at 6.45%. That's deriving our value using the income approach of $12,245,000. The owners did supply their income and expense information. Like I stated, it's owner occupied. So all we have are the expenses here to go off of. No recent sales or anything to touch on. They also submitted the COVID questionnaire, stating that there was some moderate impact, but didn't go on to explain any further. So based on all this information, I'm going to recommend that 2023 modeled assessment of $12,245,000 be maintained. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, any questions?
Just to confirm again, Nathan, these are the same comparables that we used for the previous property.
Confirmed.
Okay. And again, the cap rate information would be the same. Correct? Everything is model driven.
That's correct.
Okay. So since we've discussed this in the first property, I don't see.
We got the memories, Mr. Bell.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
We're good.
that's okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Whitford, any questions?
Mine were asked and answered in the first item. I think I don't need to ask them again.
Yeah. Any other questions you might have, Mr. Terrian?
Well, I try.
Okay,
I see the blended rate here. I worked out the 1469 because I'm trying to compare with the appellant's stuff. I'm assuming that's correct. And again, it's the same retail scenario that you've raised before. So I'm just confirming what I'm reading here. Now, the cap rate issue, this is a brand new building in the sense 1419, and I'm very familiar with that building, by the way, although I'm not supposed to bring my own views here. But I will look at the cap rate on the previous property. You had it at 655, and this is a really nice building, and it's at 645. So again, I'm challenged with your cap rate logic in coming up with the those figures. I'm just trying to understand a little better of how I react to all the information we have. That's all, Mr. Chairman. I'll see what the assessor can tell me, and I know he doesn't walk on water, so probably can't really tell me, but
You touched on a couple good points there. You know, it looks like from what I can see here, the models made the adjustment based on the rent per foot more so than the capitalization rate for that difference in age, bumping it up about $3 a foot and leaving the capitalization rate more or less where it is, like you pointed out, only the 0.1 difference there. So it appears to be that that's where the calculation is being done, where it's being rationalized. It's to the rent per square foot. More so than on the capitalization rate, again, based on what's being driven by the model here.
well, that's a good try anyway. You're doing your best. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. And Mr. Kipper, I don't have any further questions because any questions I would have had have already been asked either in this application or the previous one. So thank you. So Mr. Rivera, you can go ahead.
Okay. So I may just ask if everybody is familiar with this location, whether they've seen it or been in it. So it is a new location for the Toyota portion of the dealerships that are here. On page 8, you can see some pictures there of the Toyota and the Subaru dealership. The Subaru dealership is actually considerably smaller than the Toyota dealership. And you note that this client also has another Subaru dealership in the south part of the city as well. So we can flip to page 13. Again, some of the same information that we used on the previous example. The difference here is that we've gone with a slightly higher rent, obviously, for this property. 1328, and this is 57,085 square feet in total. In terms of the capitalization rate, you know, we've gone with a 650 capitalization rate. So our capitalization rate moved from one quality area or one quality classification on our retail cap rates to another. So it went from standard quality to top quality. And that's how we rationalize this. So our top quality, when we include the 5% non-recoverable, is between 625 and 675. And we've gone with 650. Again, you recall that on the previous one, we used 7%. So we've done a 50 50-point change on it. Other than that, what we're asking for, obviously, 10,522,574. I've included the income and expenses in this presentation, and I guess I'm open for questions now.
Scott, any questions?
Just one I forgot to ask on the last one, page 14, your capitalization rates. Where are these coming from? I don't see them titled. Whose capitalization rates are these?
On page 14?
Yours, yes, the industrial and the retail cap rates.
Yeah, so you would have received the retail capitalization rate study with this package.
These are Altus numbers. This is an Altus study.
Yes, yes.
Is it same with the industrial?
The industrial is also the industrial capitalization rate study that would likely have been submitted as well.
These are both Altus derived, Altus studied cap rate?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. That's my only question.
Any questions, Mr. Terrian?
Yes, I think I have one. It's been raised many times in previous boards. It's the non-recoverable at 5%. You've used 5 and 2, which is 7. Now, the problem I have, it's when it's owner occupied, it rarely changes hands. There's no lease commissions. There's no tenant inducements. And I know they'll raise the aspect of advertising, but I've got a hard time to get my head around that 7% when the arguments given are in the range I've raised. Could you comment on that, please?
So you'll note, Mr. Terrian, that we do look at the value based on the fee simple perspective. So from the fee simple perspective, we're also making adjustments on vacancy shortfall that are effectively not there, right? This is those market adjustments that we make, and that's why we're not looking at a leasehold value. However, you're right, this is a single owner occupied scenario. So the likelihood of those expenses being there maybe not as high as you would in a multi-tenanted situation. However, when we do calculate and first of all, we have done a study on this in our our non-recoverable study, and I'm sure you've heard it a few times at this
I've
point.
not only heard it, I've read it.
Okay. So what you can note is that when we do calculate the capitalization rates, we are using that non-recoverable amount in there. So that is why we put the second section there. If we are not using the non-recoverable, then there should be an adjustment to the capitalization rate, because it is included in every sale that we review and that we generate a cap rate from. And that information goes towards establishing the capitalization rates. So that is one of the reasons that we ask for an adjustment on the capitalization rate if you are not going to consider that 5% non-recoverable.
Okay, thank you. I figured I'd raise that because it's always a concern on an owner-occupied dealership for me. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And I don't have any questions that have arisen from this. So with this matter, I'm going to go on to the next one, which is 140 Inksbrook Drive.
Correct.
And when you're ready, Nathan, you go ahead.
This is file number 22-1094, roll number 140-987-72700. Street address is 140 Inksbrook Drive. Inksbrook is a tiny little street that connects Brookside Boulevard and Inkster. So we're now northwest in the city here. This is, again, a complete auto dealer, constructed in 2004. So again, a newer build. a leasable area of 73,000 square feet, and a land area of 448,000 square feet. So this is quite a large property. We have a 2023 model-driven assessment of 11,309,000 that we'll be recommending be confirmed today. Page 2 of my brief gives you an idea of Inksbrook Drive there. In case you're not familiar with it, I wasn't until I got this property here. So this is a cat dealership, so they don't do cars. My understanding is this is generally heavy machinery. In my opinion, this is probably a well-located spot for a heavy machinery dealer. Page 3 of my brief shows some older sales information here. I believe the 2003 sale would have been a land sale, and then 2005 there would be a transfer between probably related parties there. The sworn value of 9.5 million. We don't have any further information on that, so that's very much just a loose guideline. I've provided all the same comparables. Again, big box retail comparables. I don't believe I have anything very specific to this area. If you're familiar with the area, there isn't a lot out there in terms of big box retail. Page 5 of my brief has the income value workup here in summary. Like I said, 73,002 square feet. We have a model-driven rate of $12.43. Again, some massive space, so economies of scale, I believe, would be weighing that down from our comparables. And we have a capitalization rate of 7.55%. That's deriving that 11,309,000 using the income approach. The owners, like I said, it's owner occupied. So again, no leases to help us out here, no recent sales to help us out here. We're really just going off of our comparable sales. And right at the end of my brief, I've also attached the COVID questionnaire. They mentioned some moderate impact, pretty standard stuff from what I've seen, additional costs for cleaning, disinfecting, and plexiglass shields, that sort of thing. So nothing significant or out of the ordinary. So based on all of this, I'm recommending that 2023 $11,309,000 be confirmed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, any questions?
I guess the first question that I would ask is that this is a generally industrial area, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you didn't look at any industrial leases in the area that would support the rent in this location?
Nope, just the retail comparables, the same ones that have been submitted.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Terry, any questions?
Well, yeah, I was looking at that sale, but I'm not sure it's got any bearing on this property. A 2005 sale, 9,500,000. Did you look into that?
So you're right that it's based on the age, it's not something that we would put significant weight on. Generally, when you see a consideration of $1 and a sworn value separately like that, it means it's a transfer between related parties. They're selling it for $1, but they get an appraiser to come in and they have to say what the sworn value is. They come in and do an appraisal and say what it's actually worth. And that's where the 9.5 would have come from. But we don't have a sales mailer or anything on this. This was, I believe, before we started collecting information in that way. So that's all the information I have on it.
Okay, my next question is on the cap rate again. I know it's difficult, all this stuff, but so where do we go on page 7? On the cap rate, it's 7.55. So it basically exceeds everything under office, industrial, and retail. Any comment on that? Because the highest I see is 745, and you're using 755. So I'm just trying to see the logic there.
Oh, that's a fair point. I would agree that the cap rate is on the higher end. I would suggest that based on the location, like Mr. Navarro has pointed out, this is more of an industrial location. And based on the makeup of the space as well, this would probably, heavy machinery, it's probably got more of a warehouse, more of a larger type of component and less of the flashy showroom sports car type of component.
But even your industrial B, which is, I don't know if that's the right one, the highest is 7.45. So this is still higher, so I don't know. That's all you can tell me?
That's all I can tell you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I had.
Thank you, Mr. Darian. Mr. Whitbread, any questions?
None, thanks.
Hey, I'm looking also at that sale. I know it was $1, but they had to put down the value for land transfer tax purposes. And my experience is that they wouldn't over assess it because they have to pay land transfer tax based on the value they attribute. So it's probably fair. So if it was in fact worth $9.5 million in 2009, do you have any basis of what time would do to that value to the assessment date?
I would say that very roughly, if that 9.5 did represent the market value at the time, then it more than supports our 11,309,000 today.
Okay. Thank you. That completes my questions. Okay, Mr. Navarro, you can proceed.
Okay. And again, you'll note that this is an industrial area. So we have looked at this effectively as an industrial property. You'll note also that there are no comparables there, which was a mistake in putting the brief together. There was an appendix of industrial leases that should have been included in this brief, which brought the rent to 1025. That's what we based it on, is a series of leases from the area. So we had a rent of 1025. Again, there is the supporting information is not there. The capitalization rate, if you turn to page 14, there is a capitalization rate of 6.50. And I'm going to have to take you through this calculation because there was a mistake on the vacancy allowance. So the rent that we put on this was $748,271. The vacancy allowance should have been 2% instead of 6%. So the vacancy allowance is $14,965. The effective market income is therefore $733,306. Expenses, that is the shortfall, is $8,760. The management other, the 7% is $51,331. That gives us a total of $60,091.66 or $60,092. Net operating income is therefore $673,214. And with this capitalization rate of 6.50, it is $10,357,139. So obviously the approach that we took was that this was a better quality industrial property when we gauged it on the better side of our class B, which is 6.50. That's why there's such a huge discrepancy between the assessor's cap rate and ours, is that we were looking specifically at this area, which is essentially an industrial area, and applying a capitalization rate that is reflective of an industrial capitalization rate on the better side. So the end value is actually, again, $10,357,000 rounded. And again, I'm open for questions.
Okay, any questions, Nathan?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Richard, do you have any questions?
I have none, thanks.
Maurice, do you have any questions?
Yes, I always do. Could you repeat the figures? I saw 733,306 was the rent. What came after 8360 and then 51,336, I think? Is that correct?
Okay. No, so you're at 733,306. That is the
Yeah,
effect.
that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, the shortfall is 8760.
Okay, that's why I'm wrong. Okay.
And the management and other combined is 51,331.
331. Okay.
So that gives us a total of 60,092 for the expenses. The net operating income then becomes 673,214.
Okay. 673,214.
That's right.
Okay.
And if you capitalized at 6.50, that's 10,357,000 rounded.
Okay. Okay. So I had the same point on comps. I was looking for them and I saw no comps. So you've explained the oversight there, and that's too bad because it makes it difficult for us to put wage under 10 and a quarter with no comps. Anyway, that's all I had, Mr. Chairman. I'm just looking at your cap maybe again. So you're using, okay, I'm losing my stuff here. This is not you. Okay, so on your cap rates on page 13, could you, okay, you've used 6.50.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's the class B. Okay, just point me out where you come up with your 650 in that is at the bottom on the class A there, or is it on the class B?
I don't think it makes a difference. It's the same number for both.
Okay.
So it's the top end of the class B is 650. The bottom end of the class A is 650.
Okay. Okay. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Maurice, and I have no questions, so this matter has been closed, and I'm gonna myself ask for a 5-minute recess.
Thank you.
You're live again, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Ready to proceed then, and our next property then is 1064 McPhillips Street. And Mr. Cuthbert, when you're ready, you can proceed.
This is file number 22-2768, roll number 1405-1837100. Street address is 1064 McPhillips Street. This is a commercial vehicle service related property, so we're done with dealerships and on to body shops. This one was constructed in 1967. It has a leasable area of 4,298 square feet, a land area of just over 11,000 square feet, and we've got a 2023 modeled assessment of 836,000 that we'll be recommending today. This is a fountain tire. So we're located, like I said, on McPhillips Street, just south of Inkster. This is the only property we'll be discussing today that actually has a lease in place. If you turn to page 4 of my brief, you'll see my rent comparables table. You'll notice that comparable number 1 is the subject property. Both myself and the agent agree on the rent tier in place at $15.50. It's on a 1-year term currently. The building is older than the rest of the sample size of comparables here. These are our higher end vehicle service garages. They tend to rent more than the mom and pops that we get in the income and expense mailers. So in no particular order, these are, what do we have here? I believe it's 2 fountain tires, a Cal tire, a Mr. Lube, and 1 other. So those types of businesses. Page 5 of my brief has the modeled work up here. Like I said, it's 4,298 square feet of leasable area. The model is plucked to rent $18.45, which I think is fairly consistent with that rent comparables table that I've supplied on page 4. This one, like I said, is falling to the low end of that. All the other parameters are model driven, 2% vacancy, 3% expenses, and a $6 shortfall. And in the case of this property, there's a capitalization rate of 8.95% being applied. And that's what's deriving our value of $836,000. I'm sure you can realize here, what I would actually recommend is a reduction in the rent and a reduction in the capitalization rate. Once you get through the math of it, you end up back at about $836,000, which is why I'm recommending that it be maintained. All the other information in the brief following through here is consistent, our capitalization rate tables and so forth. Like I stated, we do have rents in place, so I've included the income and expense mailer at the end of the brief, as well as the COVID questionnaire, just supplying some additional information. That's all the information that I have. So at this time, we are going to recommend that 2023 assessment be maintained at $836,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Navarro.
Everything is model driven, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't have any further questions.
Mr. Whitbread, any questions?
I have none, thank you.
Mr. Terry, do you have any questions?
I'm not sure I understand. You said that the lease was at 1550 and that you agreed that this was okay. Could you clarify that? But then if I understand, you've reworked your figures and you've adjusted the cap rate to come up with the same 836. Am I missing something here?
Yeah, so 1064 McPhillips. We're looking at page 4 of my brief now. You're absolutely correct that the 1550, it falls on the low end, right, of these comparables.
Yeah.
One of these other ones is even another Fountain Tire, so it's even low compared to what other Fountain Tires rent for. I would suggest that's due to 2 factors. One is the location here. Most of the other 4 comparables here are all south end of the city. This one's North McPhillips. And then the other is the advanced age of the building. This one is 10 years or more older than all of the other comparables, 20 years older than some of the other comparables. So I think that's that's the main reason why it's renting at $15.50, while as the rest of our sample size is renting up there closer to $20. The modeled rent is $18.45, which I believe is fairly reflective of that sample size that I've provided. If I were to come into this fresh and say do my own appraisal for this, like I said, we would probably use that $15.50. It's an arm's length net lease, that's fair. But the capitalization rate would also be adjusted fairly significantly, likely down to that 7 to 7.5% range. And when you make both of those adjustments, you come out to a value that is again at $836,000 or higher at that point. So I can't recommend a reduction on this.
Okay, I was trying to understand the gymnastics of this one. Okay, that's all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Upper. You did clarify for me what you said earlier. So you believe that the model has arbitrarily taken a high cap rate, but a low rent. And if you were to make adjustments on both, you'd end up with the same amount.
Yeah, it's come to a roundabout way of coming to a reasonable value, I believe.
Okay, well, see what Mr. Navarro has to say on that. Thank you very much.
So you can flip to page 16 on this one. And we look at a set of comparables from closer to the area. You can look at those on page 13 for retail. However, we went with the rent in place at $15.50. Vacancy allowance of 2%, shortfall of $6, non-recoverables again of 7%. Capitalization rate, we did adjust it to 8.25. I mean, what I will say about this is that it's slightly slightly different location from where a lot of the auto uses are on McPhillips Street. And it's also an older building. It's not a recent build, it's from 1967. So we are looking at an older property. That's why we adjusted the capitalization rate. We didn't feel that the model was correct to begin with. But we don't think that this is a great location either. So we've come up with a value of 729,706. So I'm open for questions.
Did you cover any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Terry, any questions?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Whipper, any questions?
I have none, thanks.
And I don't either. Thank you very much. Okay, so we'll now go to 1343 McPhillips. You ready, Mr. Pepper?
This is file number 22-3808. Roll number 1407-151-0000. Street address is 1343 McPhillips Street. This is again a commercial vehicle service related property. This one is a Cal Tire. It was constructed in 2012. All on one story, leasable area of 8,856 square feet. Lot area of 21,759 square feet. And a 2023 modeled assessment using the income approach of $1,748,000 that we'll be recommending today. Page 2 of my brief provides some good photos. We're now just north of Inkster, so this is just removed from the corner of Inkster and McPhillips. I would argue that this is a good location for a vehicle service related property. You get lots of traffic there. We have no recent sales to go off of for this property. The 2011 sale that you see on page 3 of my brief would have been just for land value, as it was built in 2012, the following year. Given that this is a Cal Tire, I provided the same rent comparables, the higher end of our vehicle service related properties. These are not mom and pop operations. They tend to rent for more, they're nicer, they generate more, they have better service, and so on. Page 5 of my brief has the income value workup with 8,856 square feet of leasable area. Similar to our last VSG property, it's being modeled at around $18 a foot, just over $18 a foot. Everything else is standardized per the model, 2% vacancy, 3% expenses, a $6 shortfall, and again, a high capitalization rate, this one at 8.65%. And that's deriving our value using the income approach of $1,748,000. This one is owner occupied, unlike the last property, so we have no direct net rents to point to here. Just our best available comparables list. And based on those comparables, I am going to recommend that the 2023 assessment of $1,748,000 be maintained. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. questions?
This is all model driven, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's my question. Thank you.
Mr. Rupert, any questions?
I have none, thank you.
Mr. Terry, any questions?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I guess my question is on the cap rate, 865. It seems like it's a pretty nice property. It's looks like it's well suited for what it does. Pretty location for doing what it does as well on a busy street. So why would the cap rate by the model be picked at 865.65?
That's a conversation I intend to have with the modelers later. I don't really have a good explanation for why the capitalization rate is being modeled that high, unless it's largely being pulled from industrial samplings, industrial sample sizes, industrial variables within that calculation. That's really the only thing I'm grasping at here as to why that capitalization rate is so high. Again, if I were looking at it with a fresh set of eyes, I would think somewhere in the 7 to 7.5% maximum. I mean, this is a 2012 build, so I'm not entirely sure where the appeal is coming from. I see this as a very reasonable value.
Okay, thank you. And we'll proceed with our next property.
We can turn straight to page 15.
Okay.
So we had, page 12. We have a set of comparables there that we've used to establish a market rent. The average is $12.90. The median is 11. These are coming from, I guess what you would call the Garden City area. This is not that far from there. In terms of the rent, we've obviously adjusted the rent downwards, and we've used a market rent in this situation. So we've done the exact opposite of what the city has done in this case, where we have actually dropped the capitalization rate instead from 865 to 7. So we've come up with a value of 1,484,446. And I'm open for questions.
Hey, Mr. Cuffer, any questions?
You've arrived at a rate of $14.50 per foot for this
Correct.
Cal Tire based on the comparables you're saying?
Yes.
So the adjustment then, because this is a 2012 building, the last one we discussed was a 1967 building, is entirely in the capitalization rate then, because you've actually lowered the rent for this property.
Yeah, and lowered the capitalization rate.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Mr. Terry, any questions?
Yes, I'm looking at your workup on page 15, and the city used 8856 square feet. You've even in your opening statement used 8856, but now you're using 7935, which comes from the mailer, I guess. So we're looking at different areas. The city was 8856, you're at 7935. Could you explain that difference? Because it's about 900 square feet.
Yeah, I believe 8856. That may not be correct. So we are taking it from the mailer.
Okay. Well, don't know what that means, but I looked at that too, and then I saw there's a net income figure here on the mailer. If you want to talk about that for a minute, net income rent is 174, 983.52, and it says it's net. That's 7935. Now, I don't know. I guess you're using part of the mailer in your workup, but the rest you're using a rent that is based on comps that are between 11 and 1150, and you come up with 1450. So
Yeah.
Could you try to maybe make this a little clearer for me?
Well, I didn't understand the capitalization rate argument based on the model, and you're probably going to have a hard time understanding this one. So we've adjusted the rent to reflect what we think is market. However, I do see the contract rent of $22.46 there, and it's a legitimate rent. It was signed at the slightly before, actually, a few years before the reference date. So definitely, it's something that should be considered.
I'm just working something out here. But I'm not sure I'm getting any clarification on the 8856 versus the 7935 square foot. You're saying that you don't feel the one is correct, the 8856, but what's the evidence for us to adjust it?
Yeah, I mean, look, anytime that we have a leasable area, they tend to vary from year to year. But in this situation, the square footage is being taken straight out of the mailer. So when we do a calculation on the rent, we are looking strictly at the mailer for the size of the property. So we're not actually consulting with the city on that. And that's why you often see a slight discrepancy in the sizes of properties from what the city has and what we have.
Okay, well, it's something else I did here on the mailer. The net was 174,983. I divided that by the 8856, and that gave me a rent of 1976 per square feet. So I'm trying to tell you how I've tried to put logic. You're using part of the mailer, so I'm using all of the mailer with the adjustment of the square footage. You follow me?
I do follow you, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so can you help me come to a conclusion of some kind here?
I can't help you correct the size of the property. That's something that you'll have to consider because, again, we are taking the mailer as our size. So in terms of the rent, I think I've explained that we took the market rent and downgraded we dropped the capitalization rate.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I think that helps me understand a little better. I'll do my best.
I think it confuses me more, Mr. Terry, but anyway, thank you.
Okay. That's part of the game.
Mr. Whipper, did I ask you already if you had any questions?
No, you did not.
Okay, if you have any questions, please ask them now. Sorry.
I have the same questions as Mr. Therian on the site
There we go.
and on the rent. I still don't, after that explanation, understand the numbers, but we'll do our deliberations.
Okay.
No further.
And I'm going to say, I think that Mr. Terry was very good at the question he asked because he obviously did his homework, and I didn't look at the mailer. I was going to let you respond to it, but I am now. But I guess the thing I've got to say is, so you always, when you have a discrepancy in square footage, you look at a mailer and you come to us and you say, let's just use what's in the mailer. And you don't think it's necessary to provide us with evidence to show the city is incorrect in the information they have. And we should just go with the mailer, which we don't know how it was arrived at, who filled it out, what they were looking at when they filled it out, whether they were right or wrong.
Right.
And give us no evidence whatsoever, except that somebody on the mailer wrote that number down.
Correct. And I think, from our perspective, the owner knows exactly how much, area he's leasing.
Yeah, but you're coming here and you're advocating for him. So I think that you should really come with evidence.
Yeah.
When you're asking us to make a change from what the city records show. And if you don't come with that, the person who filled out the mailer isn't here to give sworn testimony.
Correct.
So we don't know, we can't question how he arrived at or where he got it from. And so we're just based on you're saying, well, we think the mailer must be correct because the owner must have filled it out right. But that's really conjecture on everybody's part if we do that. And you ask us to make a decision based on that. And it's very difficult to do that. I'm just telling you, because in the future, we're going to have this come up again and again.
Yeah.
And I think if you come here, you should come with evidence. That's what I'm saying. If you want us to make variations.
How we got the square footage on the property.
Okay. So,
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. And so that was my observation. I don't have any questions. So thank you. And well, as you said, Mr. Whipper, delivered on that one. And so that takes us to the last matter on the agenda today, which is 607 Jarvis Avenue. And Mr. Pepper, when you're ready to proceed.
This is file number 22-2711. Roll number 14002353100. Street address 607 Jarvis Avenue. This is again a commercial vehicle service related property, all on one story, constructed in 1987. We have 2,100 square feet of leasable area on a land plot of just under 15,000 square feet. We have a 2023 modeled assessment, again, all model driven, of 440,000 that we'll be recommending be confirmed today. Page 2 of my brief shows you some photos here. So we're on the corner, or just off the corner, of Jarvis and McGregor here. So this would be in between Arlington and Salter, just north of the train tracks there, I believe. We do have a recent sale on the property, but the registration date was in July 2021, so I had to kick it from my brief here. Page 4 shows a rent comparables table. You'll notice this is a different rent comparables table than the one that I've been supplying. Like I stated, the last one that we had discussed, those were largely, franchise is the right term, but they're not mom and pop shops. These are. So in no particular order, these are types of properties like Earl's Automotive, Anchor Marine, Tony's Auto Academy Service, Urban Garage Auto, Signature Motors, that sort of thing. So there are some differentiations. Our average of the rents here is about $5 lower from what we've seen from what the Fountain and the Cal Tires and those sort of things rent for. So this, I feel like, is a better representation of likely where the property should be. Page 5 of my brief has the income value workup. Similar to other properties that we've discussed today, it feels like we're overshooting the rent slightly here, as well as the capitalization rate, and likely coming to a fairly reasonable assessed value at the end of the day. So we've got 2,100 square feet of leasable area, a rental rate of $18.33 being applied, 2% vacancy, 3% expenses, a $6 shortfall, and this one got an 8.25% capitalization rate, which is deriving our value of $440,000 using the income approach. This property, I believe, is owner occupied. So again, unfortunately, we don't have rents to go off of. I believe the information here that's been supplied is all book rents. So again, we're basing ourselves just kind of off of the market, off of these rent comparable tables. I believe that the assessment that our model is generating here is a fair one, and I'm going to recommend that 2023 assessment be confirmed at $440,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro, any questions?
Yeah, I guess the first one would be that your rent average here is $1,465. Your weighted average is $1,222, and your median is $1,263. And taking from your commentary about how this is a mom and pop operation, the model has apparently overshot the rent by quite a bit. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And in terms of the overall capitalization rate, you also stated that the model overshot the capitalization rate at 8.25. That's correct?
I believe so.
Okay. So I think location is one of those factors that factors into the capitalization rate, does it not?
Oftentimes, yes.
Okay. And would you not agree that this is not maybe a favorable location for any type of garage? It has a lack of visibility. It's not typically on a high traffic area. Really, you would have to know about this through word of mouth to know that it's actually there, correct?
I'm not intimately familiar with this area. I don't drive past it personally very often. From what I can see from the surrounding photographs, it looks like the adjacent properties are also industrial type or warehouse type or auto body shop type properties. So I'm not sure I would call it a one-off based on what I can see here.
Okay. So you're not familiar with the location then?
I know where it is.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Whipper, any questions?
Yes, following following Mr. Navarro's question on the rent. So in all other cases today, you've undershot. The model has undershot the rent. In this one case, you've overshot significantly by $6 almost. And you can't explain why it was overshot versus undershooting all the other ones. And I'm using Mr. Navarro's terminology.
Sure. So there are a few examples on this list that I do believe are supportive of our $18 a foot rent. I would point to the fact that this is actually a newer building relative to that comparables list that I provided. It's a 1987 build, so it's not particularly old or anything. I would agree with you that the model is presenting a rent that's likely above what the property would achieve. But consistent with the other vehicle service garage properties that we've discussed, I do believe this is likely an ongoing and consistent issue where the rents are being overshot and the capitalization rates are also being overshot up into that 8.5, close to 9% range without any real justification. So, I believe that the final value being produced here is a reasonable one and a defendable one. Those are my comments about the values being used.
Sorry, did you say that the the built dates, this is an older or a newer building?
The average age in my comparables list here for the mom and pops is quite a bit older than the other comparables list that we were looking at. I don't have an average at the bottom here, but it looks like 1980 to 1975 kind of thing would be our average. And this one's a 1987, so while it's not a new building, it would actually fall towards the newer end of our comparable spectrum here, which might be part of the reason why it's being modeled on the higher end as well.
Okay, let's leave that and let's shift gears for a moment. Can we go to your photo on top of the page 2? And I'm trying to understand the ratio is 7.01. Now, there's a heavy purple line around this property where the red dot is. Is that the complete property, or does it take in that small rectangle on the right side as well?
That's a great question. Give me 30 seconds here to pull it up in our system and see what I can see. Because you're right, the calculation is correct. The 2,000 out of 14,000 would be a 7 land to building ratio, right?
Right. I can leave that question if you like until we get to the applicant's evidence, because he's got a better photo in his evidence, and you can maybe comment at that point.
That would be great. Hopefully I can get a measurement done for you by then and tell you the exact dimensions.
Are you okay with that, Mr. Chair?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, we'll come back to that final question. I have no other questions.
Okay, Mr. Terry, any questions?
Yeah, well, I'm scrolling to just trying to understand. Did you say you believed it was owner occupied? You weren't sure? What was your comment on that? Is it owner occupied or not? Because I'm looking at page 9 and I'm trying to see what that means.
Yeah, so it's Manitoba Limited Company as the ownership group there. Based on the income and expense mailer, they don't have a lease start or any lease information. The tenant name, Roadlink Auto, I didn't do a company search to see if that was related. My assumption here, based on how it was filled out, is that this is not an arm's length lease and not an income and expense mailer that we would rely on.
So we're speculating a little bit on that, then, are we?
I am at this moment, yes.
Yeah, okay. Because when I look at that page 9, I see the square footage at 2,200 and the rent of 2,400. So I don't know what that means, but I've tried to work this out a bit, but I wasn't sure of the owner occupied business and also what this all meant.
Yeah, that would have been about $13 a foot if that is.
Yeah, 1309.
That's what I got, yeah.
Okay, that's what you have. Okay. So I don't know how much weight we put on that. It's just that it's a question I had. You're at 1833. They've got 2200. You've got 2100, which is close anyway. I don't think there's anything else at the moment, Mr. Chairman. I just trying to get my head around this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread, do you have any questions?
Asked. I asked them.
You asked them?
Yeah, you've asked him already. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's getting late in the day and, okay, and I have no further questions other than, the observations that were made already by the previous panelists, so, Mr. Navarro.
Okay, so this is 607 Jarvis Avenue. And we have the assessment at 440. We're asking for 337,000. If you flip to page 6, you can see the overhead map. The red teardrop represents the property. So next to the right, you see that there is a smaller sliver of a separate property. And to the left, there is another industrial property. So ours is the one in the middle with the red teardrop. You can see an overhead picture on page 7. And so it is the building just next to the where it says Jarvis Avenue, just above that. That is the building. And it also has the land right up to the back lane. But it does not include the property to the right. So on page 6, you can see an outside picture of it. So we have 2,100 square feet of leasable area. I believe that is based on a gross area, and 14,721 square feet. So that works out roughly to about 7.01 to 1 ratio between land and buildings. So if we turn to page 13, we have a set of comparables, and some of these are really not applicable. I did not look at the retail section of those comparables. I looked more so at the auto use ones. And in particular, we have a comparable there around Pembina Highway 460, around 2,100 square feet at 1644. So 16 is probably overshooting the rent, actually. Considering Pembina is, I would dare to say, a better location than this location. In terms of the allowances, I've just followed the market allowances. So 2% for vacancy, $6 per square foot on shortfall, 7% non-recoverables. In the capitalization rate, I've chosen a cap rate of 9%. And I think this speaks mainly to the location of this property. I would argue that it's not a great location. It's there in an industrial area, but not the best location. It's not really an industrial area like we see today. So I think it has a poor location. And we've adjusted the cap rate accordingly to reflect that. I would also argue that at 1987, you're looking upwards at about, 36 years of age. These buildings typically have a lifespan of about 40 to 45 years. So it's getting up there in age. So we are looking for, again, 337,000 as our value. And I'm open for questions.
Did you go for any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Terrian, do you have any questions?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Whitbread, do you have any questions?
I have one. There seems to be a for sale sign outside the building. Do you know how long that sign has been up?
I believe the picture is older, so that may reflect the sale that occurred after the reference date. But the picture is actually from 2019 or so, 2020.
So prior to the reference date then?
Yeah.
And would you happen to know the asking price on the building prior to the reference date?
I don't.
Okay, thank you. And then just coming back to the land to building ratio, then I mean, my eye tells me that's not a 7-to-1 land to building ratio. Do you think that's a correct number, Mr. Cooper?
Your eyes are being deceived by a large trailer on the left side of the building there that I think is making the building look bigger than it is. It's probably used as office space, but it's not actually part of the 2,000 and some square foot building. And I did a quick measure of the lot, and it is right around 100 by 145. So that land area is correct.
Okay, so not judging by the number of cars that just appeared to be parked randomly, it doesn't look like it's a very useful space from an excess or surplus space.
I would agree with that.
That would be your assessment. Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. So you chose a rent of higher than the rent in place, or the
Not really. I would call it a book rent.
because
Yeah, but we didn't take the rent into account anyways.
okay, you're familiar with this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that completes all matters that we are scheduled here today. We will deliberate and render decisions as soon as possible. Thank you very much for everybody's participation.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thanks, gentlemen.